Hello again for everybody who's joining us for the second or third time, and hello for all of you who this is your first time. And thank you for joining us for exploring the casting and acting life cycle, where we're going to go over a bunch of topics pertinent to acting, auditions, casting, and kind of things that you should be looking out for during these uncertain times. I have to plug the upcoming webinars, which you can find at coloradofilm.org/webinar-series. We've got another one that is coming Thursday called Pitching and Marketing Your Idea with Jim Berger from High Noon and Jim Janicek from Janicek Entertainment. You can check that out on Thursday, and then we'll have some more in the following weeks as well. This webinar is also being recorded, so if you have to step away at any point, or if you know somebody who wanted to join but can't, you'll be able to find it on our YouTube page afterwards, which is also up on our website. If you have any questions as we're going along, we're going to save all the questions for the end of the session, but you can look down at the bottom bar and there's a little Q&A button. You can click on that and type in all of your questions as we go, and we'll save most of those for the end of the session. So with that, I wanted to thank our panelists all for being here. We have such an awesome group today. I'm going to start with some introductions. We have Sylvia Gregory, who you most recently saw in last week's webinar about motion capture with Deck 9 Games. Sylvia is the owner of Sylvia Gregory Casting and has cast SAG features and independent short films, video games, commercials, web spots, print ads, and ad campaigns for numerous national and regional commercials. We also have Cassie Keefe. Thank you for being here, Cassie. Cassie is an on-camera director and talent agent with Wilhelmina, Denver. Wilhelmina is the largest full-service model, talent, and artist agency servicing the entire Rocky Mountain region. And prior to moving to Denver, Cassie was a producer with NBC Universal. So very cool. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Sheila Traister. Sheila has been a working actor for close to 40 years. And also currently works as a director, a writer, and an acting coach. Anybody who's looking to find their own authentic creative voice for actors, singers, dancers, writers, public speakers, broadcasters, etc., for both stage and on-camera work. So you can reach out to Sheila if you'd like any coaching and acting advice. She's also the elected leader for the past 26 years and currently the SAG-AFTRA Colorado local president and national board member. So thank you. Sorry if I just ran through all of that a little bit quickly, but I am so eager to get to this webinar. I'm going to kick it off first with Sylvia. We're going to kind of go through each panelist and get a little background into what they all do, and then get back together for a more broad group discussion. So again, feel free to put in all of your questions as we go along, and then we'll do some Q&A at the very end. So thank you, and take it away, Sylvia.
Great. Hello. Hi. Thank you guys for joining us today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my process as a casting director, and I'm focusing mainly on commercial castings because for me in Denver, that's the majority of what I do for on-camera work. There's the occasional film, occasional web series, but mostly we're looking at commercials. So I'm just going to go through that and just talk through the points of sort of what I do when I get a casting job, how my project looks. This usually, for commercials, they move pretty quickly. So this can usually happen between a week and 2 weeks. It's like the opposite of theater, which can take 9 months. This happens like really fast. So just imagine all this happening like at one time, and that's how it kind of goes. So in most cases, what happens is the client, which is the product or the company, hires the producer, and then the producer hires me. So that's sort of how the whole thing starts, is there's a tier there. The producer is usually the liaison between the client, which again is the product, so whatever product we're trying to sell, or the agency, which is like the ad agency. So the producer is in between them and me. The producer is the liaison between us. So I am seldom talking to the client. I am usually talking to the producer, who's then talking to the client. And then the casting director, which is me, I am the liaison between the producer and the talent or the agents, depending on if the talent is represented or not. So again, the producer's talking to me, and then I'm talking to them. So again, there's seldom conversation directly between the producer and the talent or the agency. Just a little quick side note about the difference between a casting director and a talent agent. And again, Cassie, you might want to chime in on this a little bit with your thoughts. But basically, this is very general, but basically a talent agent represents an actor, and they field audition notices for them. They get them into audition calls. They negotiate their pay. They do their paperwork. They help the talent with all of that. And for all of that, they take a percentage of what the actor makes per job. So the actor's not paying a fee usually to the agent. The actor's usually paying out of their salary that they've made from the job that the agent has helped them with, some percentage, usually a small 10 to 20% amount, depending on the agency. A casting director does not represent talent. We are paid by the client or the producer. We are not paid by the actors. And the difference there also is that a talent agent will have a smaller pool of actors that they are helping to get work and negotiate their jobs. Whereas a casting director can pull from a wide pool of anybody, with agents, without agents, real people if we're doing real people, and we're not being paid by the actors, we're being paid by the client. Does that sound about right, Cassie?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, basically, we're working for the actors. We're also marketing them to clients, to casting directors. So, yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. Okay. Great. The casting director tries as hard as we can to keep in mind the needs of the actors. We understand the agent's point of view with protecting the actors, and so when we're negotiating with the client, which we do a lot, because the client will come out and go, we want to pay them a low amount, and we want to have in perpetuity forever, which means they can use it forever without paying fees, and we'll be like, well, that's not going to work. So we try to negotiate for the actor's interest as much as we can, but we do work for the client and not the actor, so that's something else to keep in mind. So basically, I have a list of bullet points here I'm going to be reading because there's so many things, and I'm just going to whiz through them. So if you have questions, again, write them down and we can hopefully revisit them later. So the way that this happens is I'm contacted by the producer. We negotiate, usually before I'm hired, we're negotiating talent rates, because the producer's bidding a job. They need to know how much the actors are going to be charging. They need to know how much I'm going to be charging, so that when they bid the job, they can give that to the client, so they can hopefully get the job. So usually that stuff is all figured out before we even start work. Once we get a green light that the job's a go, I'm hired. I give a contract to the client. They sign that. They get that back to me. We compile all of the information from the producer, from the agency, from the client, that the actors and the agents are going to need. So that's, talent rates, usage, sides, breakdowns. Is it union? Is it non-union? Casting dates and times, shoot dates and times. Is it going to be on location somewhere far away? Is there mileage involved? Housing, all that kind of stuff. We get all of this stuff put together, and we start building it for our casting session in what's called casting networks. We usually use casting networks for our jobs. There are some times where we don't do that. If it's just a remote, everyone's self-taping, and we're just emailing a Google Doc, we don't use casting networks, but usually we're putting them in that. That's a system connected to Actors Access, where most actors are already in casting networks. Their pictures are in there, all their stats, their resumes, so that we can just start, the agents can easily submit them, and it's all digital, which is fantastic. So let's see, we get all that put together, we get it all out to the agents and the talent. Then at the same time, we're securing our studio, we're securing our casting staff for all of the casting dates. I will have a phone call with the producer or the director. Usually the director wants to do a quick call just to be sure we're all on the same page as what we're looking for, because often the directors are not at the initial casting session. So I am the representative for the director at those sessions. So I need to just be really clear on what the director wants to see, and I have to be sure I'm giving them what they need. So we'll have a quick meeting usually about that on a phone call. If we're doing a real person casting, this is when we will start posting everything on social media, distributing it via email to any actors who I know or have seen who are not represented. The real people casting takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of extra work. So if we're posting stuff, it's going to require multiple postings, usually over a period of a week or two, if we have 2 weeks, which is a luxury. So usually it's like every second or third day, we'll do another repost. We'll do another repost. It starts to look like spam, but it's the only way that we can get people to see it who haven't seen it before. And we'll put it on as many groups as we can and try and really spread a huge wide net to get the word out there. That process takes time. So we start that as soon as we possibly can. At this point, I will send out talent requests. I'll go through all of the agents' talent for each agency. I'll look at which actors I think from each agency are going to be the best fit based on what I know about their skills and their look, but also based on my phone call with the director and what the director has told me that he or she is looking for. So I'll start putting together lists from each agency of who I hopefully would like to see if they're available. And then I also go through all of my non-repped files and start putting together a list for my associate Rebecca to start contacting those people directly and seeing if they're interested in auditioning. So that happens then. After a day or two, we give the agents a day or two to get everybody put together and submitted into casting networks. And then I start looking at those submissions. Once the submissions are in, I go through and I select who out of the people that have been submitted I'd like to see for the audition. Usually in casting networks, you're able to choose, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So we'll go through and we'll figure out the math of, okay, we can see 32 actors per role and we have 5 roles. So that means, I can choose 32 ones, and then I'll choose 32 twos, and then I'll choose however many 3, 4s, or 5 there are based on the submissions. So there's always math involved, which is dumb, but that's really important so that we get the numbers right, so that we're not over scheduling or under scheduling. I always want actors to realize if they're called in for an audition, you have to think of it as your first callback. Because actually, when I'm selecting you from the agent's submissions, that's your first audition. You've passed the first milestone just by being selected. So I hope that encourages people when they get called in, that they've actually already been reviewed and selected when they're in the room for the first time, because we think you're going to be a good fit. So I always hope that makes people feel a little less nervous about being there. So we'll go through, we'll do that, we'll make all our selects, and then once those are done, we start scheduling talent. And the scheduling is usually done by my associate Rebecca. She's really good at it, and it's really hard and really complicated. We try to get conflicts in advance for the audition days as much as possible, but that's not always possible. So there's a lot of juggling. There's a lot of rescheduling based on other people's needs. That process usually takes a couple days. While she's doing that, I'm getting everything ready for the actual sessions. So that's actually putting together all the stuff we'll need at the sessions, which is paperwork, sign-in sheets, copies of scripts and sides, session sheets for the names, the lists of who's coming in. We need to gather props. We have to purchase craft services. We have to order lunch. We have to make sure we have coffee on hand. We get all the information out to the client as far as where they're going to be, what time we're going to start, how long we're going to go, how many people we're seeing. All that stuff has to get put together before the session. So all of that brings us to our first session. So we haven't even done a session yet. And now we're at our first in-studio session. These usually they go for a full day. If it's a big spot and we're seeing many people, we'll do 2 or 3 initial sessions. It depends on the spot. Usually for an initial audition session, you're in the room for 3 minutes, maybe 5, but it's really fast. It takes you longer to get there than it does to do the audition. Callbacks, usually you get 10 minutes, you get a little bit longer. Usually at the callbacks, the director is there. They want to work with you, they want to play, they want to see how you respond, they want to throw some stuff, they might pair you with people, so we always allow a little bit extra time at the callback session. It depends also, we can see up to 120 people a day, 150 people a day. Sometimes the clients are like, we want to see as many people as possible. Sometimes they're like, that's way too much, we can never choose. And then we'll keep it to 60 a day. But we try to give them as many options as we can fit into the room. At the end of the day, we send a link to the client, even if they were in the room, because there's other people that are going to have to review it that weren't there. So we send them a link with footage, with a session sheet at the end of each day with pictures of the actors, so they have all that. And then if there are callbacks, just repeat all that as many times as there are callbacks. We just do the whole process all over again for the callbacks. The difference with callbacks is that we'll probably see hopefully a third of the people that we're seeing for the initial session. Sometimes it's half, which I always think is a little too many people, but sometimes the clients just wants, they want to have the wide net. So we'll go through that. And then once the client has narrowed down who they like after a callback, or if it's just a one session after the session, we'll put actors on first refusal, which means that the actors can't take any other jobs unless we release them if they're offered something after we've put them on first refusal. So sometimes the agents, and Cassie can talk about this too, but sometimes the agents will go, hey, Stu just got another offer and he's on first refusal with you, but it's a really big job, and can you ask the client if they're really seriously considering him so that maybe we can release him? So we'll do that sometimes for people too. But Stu is not allowed to take that other job unless he's released from our job, technically. So actors will hang out on first refusal until the client makes their decision, and then we book the talent. Booking talent usually involves some paperwork. They always need the talent sizes for wardrobe right away. Usually, sometimes it's like we haven't even really officially booked them and they want wardrobe. Sometimes we give them wardrobe at the callbacks just so that they can start shopping, because sometimes they have a day to buy the wardrobe for the actors. It happens really fast. We'll have to do deal memos. If it's a union job, we have to do Station 12 reports. We have to do any Taft-Hartleys for actors who are non-union but have been hired. So there's all that paperwork. Once the paperwork is back, once we get the signed deal memos back from the agents or the talent, we then release anyone else who was on first refusal who did not get hired. And then at the end of that, we invoice the producer, and that's pretty much the whirlwind job of casting a commercial. I wanted to say a little bit before I pass it on to Cassie about what I look for in an audition. And this is something that I look for in an audition, no matter if it's a commercial or a film or a video game or a play or a musical, is that I really want someone coming into the room, especially in a callback situation, who acts as though, or is approaching it as though they already have the role and they're there to rehearse. And I want someone who is prepared, who has put in the work on the script, who knows their lines, who's memorized as much as possible. Even if you've only had it for 6 hours, get your head up off the page as much as you can. Come in with a strong idea of how you want to approach it, but really be able and willing to listen and to take direction. And I would say that an audition, half of the audition process is about listening to what you're being told and adapting what you're doing to what you're being told. Taking direction is a huge part of the audition process. That's why I think if you approach it like you're in a rehearsal, it keeps it loose, it keeps it playful, but you're still professional. I think that's a really good mental place to put yourself before an audition. That's my spiel. I don't know if that was under time or not, but
that was great. Thank you so much. And I don't want to interject too much, but we did just get a clarification question. Did you say it was Taft-Hartley, that paperwork that an actor has to sign before the talent can be released? Somebody asked that question.
There's a first refusal, which is you can't take any other jobs until we release you. Okay. A Taft-Hartley is if you are a non-union actor and you've been hired for a union job, the production company needs to Taft-Hartley you. So that's not something that you do. It's something that we do, where the production company, often the talent agent writes it, but it's in the name of the production company, why that particular person is being hired over a union actor. What did that person have to offer that no other union person had to offer? So that's what a Taft-Hartley report is. And then a Station 12 report those are just pulling reports of everyone who is a union member. We just have to go through the SAG-AFTRA website and just be sure that you're paid in full before you can be hired. So a Station 12 report just proves to the client that you are a paid in full member before you're hired. And it's come up a couple times where someone's not, and they thought they were, or their agent thought they were, and they have to pay right away. We can't hire them until they're paid. So sometimes there's some last minute money transferring happening so people can get their jobs. Does that answer that question?
I think so. And to whoever asked the question, Joe, if that didn't answer your question, please submit another one and we'll try to get to that towards the end of the Q&A. So thank you. Cassie, please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. So the easiest way to get in the room with someone like Sylvia, in the room with the casting director, is to go through an agency and to have an agent. I'm sure a lot of you listening today fit several categories. Maybe you are represented, maybe you're not represented, maybe you've been represented before and are currently looking for representation. Having an agent is important. Like I said before, we're in charge of marketing you. I kind of always tell my talent, I'm like their mama bear. I'm there to protect them, make sure that they're paid the right amount, that paperwork looks good. We never want anybody to be taken advantage of while they're on set. So that's sort of our whole course. Finding an agent it sounds like it'd be something that's simple, but I always encourage talent, do lots and lots of research. Never sign just immediately with the first agency that says yes to you. It's a partnership. It's a very important partnership, in my opinion. Very similar to when you're finding an acting coach. You need to find someone that you personally feel like you have a connection and a relationship with, because, you know, knock on wood, it's a relationship you're going to have for a very long time. It's going to be a very happy and fulfilling relationship. So you want to make sure it's the right person. So whenever I'm meeting with people for auditions to be represented by us, I love it when I hear people know about me, when I don't feel like they're creepy or anything, when they're like, oh yeah, I know you've done X, Y, and Z, and you've lived here for 6 years and blah, blah, blah. I love that people want to do research about who's representing them. People who do research about the company that's representing them. All the different agencies here are fantastic. There are a lot of fantastic agents here, and everyone has different personalities and different things to offer. So you really want to find someone that's going to be the best fit for you. When talent come in to meet with me, I feel like prepared is going to be the magic word of this webinar. So talent who are prepared are going to stand out the most. When you first submit to me, do you submit a headshot and a resume? I've recently had people that's all they email to me, with no body in the email. So then I write them back, hi, who are you? What is this for? What do you need? So explaining to me, you know, hi, I'm an actor. I just moved here from Pittsburgh and I'm really looking for representation in Denver. Or I just recently left my representation and I'm looking for some new representation in Denver. At least give me a little something about yourself. If you have a reel, fantastic. I know casting directors, a lot of times they don't really have the time to look at reels when they're going through talent for auditions, but I really enjoy looking at them. And I know sometimes when clients are directly looking at agencies' websites, they like to see a general body of a talent's work. So if you have a reel, please send it. Then if I feel like you're somebody who would be a good fit just based on that, I'll invite you to come in to meet with me. I typically take 15 to 30-minute meeting with you. I ask that you come in prepared with a monologue, also preferably 1 or 2 commercials as well. Sometimes I'll also have you do a cold read. I want to see what you can provide for me. It's a two-way relationship here. I'm going to work hard for you, but I need to make sure that you're going to work hard for me as well. A lot of people don't realize the amount of hours that talent agents put into our talent. My hours are technically 9 to 6 in the office, but I can't tell you how many times I'm up till 10 p.m. on a Saturday night emailing Sylvia. You know, we put in a lot of time, and we're not making any money unless our talent get booked on something. So we're really investing our time in you. So it's super important that you are prepared and you show up with everything you need. Now, let's say the meeting comes. Possibly you do a fantastic job with your monologue and your commercial. However, you can't make eye contact with me. You can't even shake my hand. You can barely hold a conversation with me. Those are going to be red flags that I'm going to see, especially being in such a commercial market like Denver. Having some personality is a big deal. You want to sit and talk with someone that, you know, commercials are selling people things. So I want to sit there and talk to someone that can sell me something. So I might have that conversation with people, and sometimes it's hard and I hate having to do it, but I'll sit down with someone and say, you know what, I think maybe you need to take some improv classes. Maybe, you know, you need to just do something to help get some more of their personality out, even like taking a dancing class or something just to get out there more. Because you might be great technically, But if the personality is not there as well, it's going to be really challenging for you in a market like this, because we're a small market, but there are some awesome people that work here. So you want to make sure that you're up to the competition. So being super prepared, super important. If I offer you representation, I'll offer you the contract. Basically, you know, we're here representing you. So we are the ones that handle all the submissions for you. When casting directors send us all the info, we make sure to filter through everything. Sometimes it might be a really general casting. And my job, the casting directors, they trust the agents to send them the best people possible, because you're representing me, but you're also representing them when you're in that room. So if I'm getting a casting, my job is to send the best possible people. I know a lot of people see in like movies and TV shows that an audition is just like, show up, whoever can show up can come to the audition. You can come anytime you want, you just wait in line. That's not how it works. You have to make sure that you're a right fit for the role, and you want to make sure that you're scheduled and that you're accommodating. Communication is huge in this industry. I think Sylvia mentioned before, just listening and following direction. I look for that as well. If I'm meeting with someone and I'm giving them direction or giving them feedback and they don't listen to me, that's a huge red flag to me. If I give someone very specific directions, which casting directors, producers, they usually give us very specific directions as far as what they need from talent. If you can't follow those basic instructions, that makes me nervous to put you on set. Directors, they don't want to have to work with people that can't follow direction. The more times they have to tell you what to do and they have to do retakes, the more time it takes and the more money it takes. They want someone who can nail it, someone who can follow direction and are completely prepared. So when I'm sending you an audition that Sylvia sends me, or any casting director, you have to read everything. Sometimes it's a lot. I know it's a lot, but there's a reason why there's a lot of information there, is to make sure you're prepared and you do your absolute best. So if there's a storyboard, take time to look at the storyboard. Memorize the script. Sometimes it's really long, but take the time to do it. I know that there are a lot of acting coaches and a lot of different people that teach different techniques to help with memorization. So take advantage of things like that, especially now when there aren't a ton of things going on. Take advantage of different classes and webinars and things to just help get yourself more prepared and really build your craft. The clients, research the clients. I tell talent this all the time. Follow these different brands on Instagram. There's so many brands that are headquartered here in Colorado. Follow them on social media. Look to see what they're doing. What type of talents they look for. What type of vibe do they usually go for? Are they more of like a corporate setting? Are they more of like a laid back hippie hiker type of setting? Do your research so when you walk in, you know exactly who you're meeting with and what they're looking for. You might not know, exactly what it is, but you're gonna know to an extent what that client wants, so you can show them what you need to be. But in being prepared, also take risks. Sylvia probably gets bored to death seeing the same lines said over and over and over again. Don't be afraid to put some of your own personality into it. I've had so many talent book jobs that I wasn't quite sure they were sort of a right fit, but not quite. But I know that they went in and they were who they were. And that's what the client wanted. They didn't care anymore about the description on the piece of paper. They wanted that person that they saw. And it's because that talent took a risk and they really showed that person who they wanted to be and who they thought that character should be. So don't be scared to take risks. Don't throw something completely out of left field that's gonna throw everyone off guard. But don't be afraid to actually put some of yourself into it, because that's who the client wants to hire. They want to hire you as a person. You're not this one-dimensional thing. You're a three-dimensional, you're an actual person, you're a character yourself. So learning how to sell yourself as well. I tell talent all the time, you're a brand. So figure out what your brand is and how you want to help market yourself. There's only so much I can do. I need you to meet me halfway. Trying to think how long, okay. I think that's the big chunk of it. When I send talent out for a casting, if they have time, like Sylvia mentioned, sometimes we get like a 12-hour turnaround, which those are always super fun. But if you do have a couple days in between auditions, you need to call an acting coach. Call somebody to rehearse, to practice, to be prepared. You want to walk in and you want to be that best person in the room, and you want to really show them what you're doing. If you pick up your script 5 minutes before you jump in the car, it's going to show every single time. I've had a couple of talent who have gotten lucky and they've booked their very first job without really being prepared, and that was simply pure luck. Then they didn't understand why they weren't booking any more jobs. And it's because they weren't taking acting classes, they weren't working with vocal coaches, they weren't learning how to read scripts, they weren't preparing themselves. So being prepared is the key, making sure that you're professional, that you know what you're doing. This is not an easy business. If it was, everyone would do it. So you can't just walk in a room and book a job. You can't just sit on your couch and all of a sudden someone's going to call you up and offer you a movie role. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. You really have to put in the work. And I truly believe that you get out of this what you put into it. So speaking of acting coaches, Sheila would maybe be a person that you would call if you had an audition and you needed to prepare for something.
Hi, thank you for that. I mean, you and Sylvia covered so many wonderful points that are a part of what I'm going to talk about, so I'll come back and refer to that. I think where I want to begin is not knowing, I know we have a lot of people out there. Some of you may have never acted before. Some of you have been doing this for a long time. So the way I want to approach this, and I'm going to go through some bullet points as well, is to take into consideration just sort of this framework. Think about it like a skeleton of basics that are going to walk you through the process as an actor from, you know, the moment you get your audition notice. And hopefully for those of you that have never done it, it gives you a place to start. It'll be a great refresher for those of you with experience. And I also wanted to mention too, you know, some people do this, they're hobbyists. They live in a market like Colorado. We don't have a large presence of film and television work. So as Sylvia did, I'll focus on commercial auditions, although we have a lot of actors here like myself that work in larger markets like New Mexico, which has a strong television and film presence, or Atlanta, LA, New York. So I'll touch on that. So if you're a hobbyist, that's fine, but as a hobbyist, you still need to be aware that when you're doing it, you have to present as if you're that professional. And if this is your career, then hopefully there's lots of notes here for you. So the first thing I wanted to say is that, you know, we're all part of a storytelling fabric. And every person, if you think about a jigsaw puzzle, you don't have an entire piece unless every piece is in its place and has its function. So the first thing I tell actors, you know, to be mindful of when you're thinking about the whole casting process is you have to respect the different pieces of that process and understand what you have control over and what you don't have control over. If you do that, then most likely your brain, your head, will be in the right place and set you up for the right climate for you to do your work. So when you get nowadays, I mean, when I started, I'm a dinosaur. You know, you would drive to your agent's office. They would call you and say, hey, I've got a script. And you would drive all the way down and pick up your script. Then we got fax machines. And I could get my scripts via fax machine. Now we most all get it, on the computer in an email. You're not having that one-on-one conversation. You're not talking to your agent for 20 minutes. So your job is to read that email from top to bottom. Every word. I cannot tell you how many times they have students come in and they only read the description of their character. They don't know who the client is. They don't know how the audition is going to be constructed, when it is, and what happens. So the more prepared you are, the more you understand the process, the more you can relax and focus on the things that you want to be focused on, which is your relationship to the material. So when I first get my email, what I do is I read the entire thing. I want to know what kind of a project it is, whether it's television, film, commercial, it could be an industrial, a training film. Immediately my brain, if you have experience in the business, starts to sort of settle in to what kind of a process I might have. Commercial, as Sylvia said, that's a quick turnaround. Bam, bam, bam. I'm going to get the email and I'm probably going in tomorrow. So I only have so much time with the script. If it's in New Mexico, I might have to do a self-tape turnaround. I might have a day and a half, 2 days, but I might not have to deal with the callback for 2 or 3 weeks. weeks later. So gets you thinking about what the process is. So at that email, you want to see who the client is. We have the internet now. You can Google that client. You can find out. If you don't know who John Smith Construction is, you can look them up and say, wow, they build these kinds of buildings, or it's a car place, or whatever they are. And immediately you start to have a context for the story that your character is living in. Find out who the client is. Maybe you'll see what kind of spots they produce. You get a feeling for their style and what they're looking for. This is all informative. If it's a TV audition and it's for a series, it could be for NCIS. There's a huge casting going on in the country right now for NCIS. Well, if you've never seen NCIS, it's time to Google it. And you can see the style and the look and the feel of the show. If you're auditioning for Aaron Sorkin, you know you have to talk this fast because everybody in his shows talks this fast because he writes about 100 million words a minute. But if it's another show with a different style and it's relaxed, you want to pay attention to those things. If the director's on the audition notice, who is that? So make sure you read everything. Learn as much as you can about the project itself. If you've never auditioned for that casting director before, you can Google them on IMDb. Sometimes casting directors have niches. Like, we're in a smaller market, so our casting directors here, they cover the gamut. I'll go into Sylvia's office. It could be a car commercial. It could be an Elitch commercial. It could be, you know, something for a bank. She's going to cover everything. In some of the larger markets, casting directors are known for their niche. Some might focus specifically on independent films or detective series. Others do sci-fi stuff. And sometimes, you know, they branch out. It depends on how large they are too. So understanding what they cast, you can learn a lot just by seeing who they tend to migrate towards. I'll notice some shows where all the actors, even if they have different hair color, all kind of look alike. You start to get a sense of type, but you can't psych yourself out about that. So read everything on the page. Make sure you understand it. If there's anything you don't understand, get all your thoughts together in one email, email your agent and say, I'm not sure I understand what I'm supposed to be looking at here. Sometimes emails come and they tell you very specifically, we want you for this role. It might say, read all these and tell us what you think you want to do, who you want to go in for. That's kind of a new thing with the internet because they can cast such a broad net. Now, that's really important to you, how you see yourself and how everybody else sees you. There's different thoughts about how to brand yourself. And you can overbrand yourself and say, well, I'm only this type. They only see me as that. And so you only submit yourself as, you know, the lowly waitress or the person in the background, whatever that is. That's how you see yourself, or that's what you think you do. But you've got to be careful about things around age, gender, and type, and I'll get real specific about that. So I'm a woman of color, and throughout my career, we didn't have the same opportunities as everybody else. So I took a lot of chances, and so did my agents. I would often be submitted for roles written for men if it didn't matter that it was a woman, but they're not thinking that way. And women have much fewer roles in our business than others. Same thing for people of color. We don't always, the descriptions will come down, and sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. So I look at scripts, at audition notices very carefully and say, is this a role that right here, it may say that the gender is for men, but it's a judge. I don't see any indication that it can't be me, and that's the best fit for me. I'm going to tell my agent that I want to submit for the judge. And if they won't let me go in, there's a reason why it has to be a male role. Then, you know, well, here's who I would do as the female role. And 80% of my career is booking work that I was not called in for, or that they originally didn't consider me for, because I know what I can do. Now, sometimes I get an audition notice and I'll think, oh, I'm not right for that. I'm too old for that. I'm too this for that. If they want to see me, I'm going. So the Olympics 2 years ago, there was a commercial that came through and they wanted an Asian woman, but it was clearly someone probably 20 years younger than me who had teenage children. But my agent sent me. In my head, I'm thinking, I'm never going to get it, but I have to go and I have to do my best. Well, I booked it. They didn't care that I was my age. They bought it, so there I am. So taking chances sometimes means how you look at the material. But don't send your stuff in for everything. Send yourself in for the one thing that you think you can do the best at, and then prepare for that properly. So how do you prepare? Look, everything is relationship. Our relationship to the material, our relationship to the process. So when I'm looking at the script at this point, I have to figure out if it's a commercial script, is this a slice of life piece? Am I the talking head spokesperson? Are there a bunch of people in the spot? Am I the only one in the spot? And understand what my relationship is to the subject matter. Who am I talking to? Who is my audience? How do I reach them? How does Sheila Traister as that spokesperson? How does Sheila Traister as that grandmother or that mom or that wife in the spot relate to that context? If I have a story for that going on inside of me, then I bring that to the material. So when they're talking about how you bring yourself to it, we all say that. All the acting teachers say, how do you bring yourself to the role? Bring your own personality. Well, you have to understand the story that you're living in. If you don't understand the story, it's very hard to bring yourself to it. So when you're looking at that script, what do we look at? Well, if it's a commercial script from top to bottom, I read it and I do what we call a script wash. And I see what my judgments and my biases are about the material. Because if I don't know how I'm judging the material, I'll play that. I'll show a block or a limitation. So I wash through it and I get a feel for it. I don't just focus on my lines. I focus on everything that's there on the page. You want to read all the directions, all the script notes, all the production notes on the side of the script. They'll often tell you where you're standing, who you're talking to, that it's off camera. We only hear your voice for these lines. All these things inform you on how you can walk your performance into that room. So I take a close look at that. And then what I need to look at is, why am I saying every word on that page? Too often actors only focus on the big line or the big turn or the transitional moment. You have to find the nuances in everything that you're saying. The small pieces to the big pieces, they all work together. If you're only looking at the big moments in the script, you're going to miss out, you know. And too often when people are practicing, they're going way too fast. And Sylvia, I'm sure you see this. They come into the audition room and they're all running for the period. You know, they're all playing the end result. They're all looking at the emotional tone of the piece. Well, you have to live every moment that gets us there. The nuances and the choices you make that make your work interesting are your ability to find those tiny little nuances that exist in the whole of the script. And this is whether it's commercials, TV, or film. This is all of it. It's making sure you understand why that character, you as that character, would say that. The other thing you want to pay attention to is a lot of scripts have traps in them. They can be traps for actors. They're not written to be traps, but you'll have punctuation. And I'm sure you get tired in the casting room of having 80% of the people, 85% come in and read the script exactly the same way. And everything that was in capital letters, they emphasize. And the question mark goes up on the end. And then there were ellipses, so they pause and they breathe there. So they're not really owning it. That punctuation is sort of revealing to us what the writer is thinking, or in a commercial sense, the production entity and how they want to market that piece. So it's a guideline, but you still have to find where that lives with you. So when you bring that to life, I mean, I've walked into rooms where people have said, oh my God, that's the first time today that I heard it like that. And it wasn't at all what they wanted, but I got their attention, so they redirected me. And they said, that was so fresh, but can you try it like this? And then what Cassie and Sylvia are saying about listening, that's where that plugs in. So what I know is they saw, one, that I'm an actor who, is showing up. I connect, I'm relating. But now what's important is that I can take their direction. And when you get direction like that, what you want to be careful of is don't throw everything you did out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Direction is something that you build on. Unless they say, no, throw that away, we want you to go this way. Take a note and add it to what you have. It's like the great improv thing. Yes, and, yes, and, yes, and. So when you're preparing and you're looking at a script, you want to be careful of those pitfalls. There's so many things I can talk to you about, but I'm kind of going to go through the broad strokes here and get to a few other things. So we can open it up to questions. So when you're looking at scripts, making them your own, I often take out all the punctuation, all the capital letters. I'm looking for my relationship to the material, my relationship to the other characters on the page, my relationship, if it's a commercial in particular, to the product or the service that I'm being asked to sell, basically with my voice and my face and my words. Who am I talking to? And make that conversational. Your headspace when you're going in the room, it's important to understand what you have control over and what you don't. Too often actors worry about processes that they have absolutely no control over. And that is why you get cast, why they chose somebody else over you. You walk into that audition room and you're like, oh my God, they're so young and they're so beautiful and she's so tall and he's so short. You can't control any of that. I can't grow 3 inches between now and my audition. I am what I am. So if you're thinking about what you're supposed to be thinking about, which is your work, that's what you're there to do. And I love what Sylvia said about this is your rehearsal. I tell my students, the audition is your job. If you're worried about whether your callback, you're not in the room on that call. That audition is your job. Your job is to show up and to hit that mark. I pretend like I've already been cast, and I make strong choices when I go in. So they know I'm an actor who can make choices. If they see that I can act and they want a different choice, they'll redirect me. But I make those choices. It's also about confidence. You can overhype your confidence. Hi, I'm an actor. I'm Sheila Traister, and I'm here to impress you today. And then it's kind of like, I worked in casting for a long time early in my career. It's just kind of, something turns off because it's like, I want to see you. And you can undersell yourself. You can, be in there, I'm never going to get this. I don't have, false humility doesn't serve you either. So I think it's your audition starts the moment you walk in the building. Are you respectful to the person at the desk? Do you appreciate their time, what they're trying to imagine? Do you respect that audition room? Are you mindful that other people are processing, not talking too loud, not being distracted? Are you focused on what you should be? How you're going to walk in that room. Do you know who's in the room? I always prepare as if everybody's going to be in the room. We don't always know. Could be the casting director, the director, the producer, the ad agency, anybody could be in the room. So we walk in the room, and it's important that you understand what your mark is. I would encourage everybody these days, don't reach out to shake people's hands. If they want to shake mine, well, the pandemic has changed all of that, but even before this, don't wear perfume and cologne, and you never know if your casting director is going to be allergic or the person you're supposed to be in the scene with. Be respectful of other people's time and place. Wardrobe, don't wear costumes, but wear something that suggests you understand the feel of the character. your hair and makeup, don't overdo it. We see a lot of people come in really painted up, and it kind of suggests that you might be amateur, that you don't understand, that they're looking for real people. Unless that's specific to the character, you know, then you would go there, but you want to look natural and presentable. And there's so much about the particulars of slating, which again, if you overhype yourself, you're probably going to start your material being overhyped. So you want to make sure that that's you, that they see who you are. That's who they want to work with, is the person that's just, hi, this is who I am, this is what I do. A lot of times now they don't even have you slate. So there are a couple of things that, just in general, because I know we're going to get to questions, and this idea that you're competing with other people versus competing for the role. If you're thinking about who you're competing against, you're setting yourself up to be in a pretty difficult place, because again, you don't have control over who the casting people might choose and why they choose them. Your job is to go in and do your best at that work, at that character, and you may show them something that they never considered, that they absolutely never considered, and change their mind. But you're not going to do that if you're worried about how you measure up. So what you know, in your preparation, know your script, be really good at your cold copy technique. A lot of times today, they want you memorized right away. Something comes up, you're not able to do that. Carry your script and be great at cold copy, and they'll get it. They'll see that you know how to do what you're doing. There's so much more that I could say, but I think I'll stop there, and then so we can keep on going and just answer questions.
Cool, thank you. Thank you, all three of you. That was like a flood of incredible expert information, and I think everybody's finding it really valuable based on these questions and some thank yous that we're already getting. So I just wanted to extend that to you guys as well. We do have a lot of questions, and I have a couple of my own that I jotted down. So unless you guys want to bookend any current thoughts, and maybe we can just go right back or right into Q&A. That's okay. Cool.
Q&A.
Excellent. We've got one here that asks if you guys can talk about, and I'll just direct them to the general group unless there's something really specific for one of you. But if somebody wants to talk about your review process when it comes to self-taping and how that might differ from an in-person taping session or audition session.
I can answer that one. I mean, I can start with that one. I think what happens when we get self-tapes is we watch them all. Also, we just want to be sure, well, first of all, we just want to be sure there's nothing, you know, funny or inappropriate that's been taped, because every now and then you get a kook. And so we'll watch them just to be sure that they're what we're looking for. And then sometimes, usually we upload them and we send them on, but every now and then it'll be like, that's not what we wanted. We really need the full body shot, or we really need a close up and you didn't do that. Can you please retape? So occasionally we will ask for retapes, but usually what happens is we watch them, we make sure they're okay, and then we either upload them or we send the links on to the client, and then the client reviews them, and then from there it just proceeds like a normal audition, basically.
I would add to that, because the self-tape is such a challenge from the actor's perspective. One, it's making sure you have a kind of a team of people prepared and ready to go. They're going to help you to read off camera. Right now, we're isolated. I just had to do a self-tape the other day and put the camera up and frame it for myself. So the majority of the time, they're looking for a frame on a self-tape that's about 1 inch above your head, so you have clearance there so you can move, and just below, you know, the chest plate there, you know, at the top of the ribs, where it's nice and close. You want, if you can get natural light, that's terrific. So I have a landing in my house where I have a window, and I have a permanent blue blanket on the wall that creates a backdrop. You know, you want to make sure that your self-tapes have solid backgrounds. I wouldn't shoot it in my house, for example. If it's a scene in a kitchen, Sylvia, I'm sure you've seen this. You've gotten self-tapes of people in their kitchen or in their bedroom or whatever. It should be a blank wall behind you. Sometimes in theater auditions, and we've heard both, whenever I do a self-tape, I like it up close. But I served on a panel last year with 8 of us, and at least 4 or 5 of those casting for theater wanted to see more of the person's body because they're dealing with somebody who's on stage. So if you don't know, make sure you ask. Get back to your agent or the source of the audition material and ask, how do you want this framed? I think the other thing is with self-tape, we have to choose what we're submitting to you. And it can be very difficult for us to look at our own work. One of the things that happens, I think, when you self-tape is that when you walk in the room live, you know that casting director is only going to give you one shot at it. And then if they want to redirect you, they will. So you walk in and your energy is quite different. Everything's up for grabs with that one take. I see actors spending an hour, 2 hours, and by the time they're done with their self-tapes and I see them, all the instinctual, spontaneous energy is gone. It's a perfect self-tape, but it's devoid of any natural sort of instinct. So I think you have to find that balance, not over tape, not over rehearse, find your instincts, know what the key turns are in that script, and make sure that everything looks professional about it. And if you need to, get another person's eyes on it to help you to choose.
And don't be afraid to ask questions about the self-tape. I know one of the downfalls of it is I feel like people tend to overthink their self-tapes a lot. And like Sheila said, you're no longer spontaneous. I think people really crave the direction that they get when they're in the audition room with the casting director, and you don't get that with the self-tape. Don't be afraid to ask your agent questions. If you don't fully understand something, or if you're not sure if you did it correctly, don't be afraid to ask questions. Your agent will never get mad at you for asking questions. Every single person in this discussion, we're your cheerleaders here. We want you to do a good job. We want you to book the role. We want you to succeed. So ask us how we can help you. That's what we're here for.
That's great. Thank you, guys. And I feel like asking questions is always good advice that people don't get enough. So thank you. This next question kind of ties into something that Sheila, you just mentioned about maybe you only get that one shot. Somebody's asking if most casting directors forgive flubs when actors say their lines. Sylvia, you can also obviously speak to this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, especially if you got the copy that morning or the night before, you know, or if it's cold read and we know you just got it, a lot of times it'll just be like, just keep with tell the story of whatever the copy is and bring yourself to it. And usually it's okay. Although sometimes at callbacks, there are writers in the room for commercials and they have really specifically crafted each word. So if you flub up once, it's usually like, okay, let's go back and do it again, but then you got to nail it the next time. So.
Sure.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is if you make the mistake from the performance, just keep going. If they don't say cut and they don't stop you, it may not have been enough of an issue where they care about it. They realize that on the set, they get to do another take. But if you go, oh, darn, and then that costs them time and money on the set, they need to know that you can carry the through line until they say cut.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. This next question is asking, where can you get footage if you don't have a reel? So perhaps you are an aspiring actor and haven't been on film yet. Do you have any suggestions there?
Do they mean they have been in things and they just don't have the footage?
I'm not sure. It says, where can you get footage if you don't have a reel?
I think it means someone just starting out, is my sense.
Building a reel.
So. Yeah.
I recommend for a lot of my students to, if you live in Denver, there's the Colorado Film School, all the universities that have film programs have students making films. I did, and then there's somebody, there's student films. I did 5 student films in the last 3 semesters. And one of them is going all around the world. I've won, awards. The film has won dozens of awards. And I now have a current reel that I can pull from. And the other thing with student films is oftentimes I'm playing leading roles that when I'm working in New Mexico or LA, sometimes I'm a principal player, a day player, and I get a little scene and I'm opposite the star. Well, they're mostly keeping the camera on the star. And in the student films, I often get to play leading roles. That gives me a lot more material for my reel. And nowadays, because of digital equipment, those student film projects look a heck of a lot better than they used to when I was teaching in the film school and everything was shot on film. So usually you can get what you need. The other thing is, you know, people are making films on their phones, and you can get together. If you have an acting coach, I've done that, where we actually wrote a script for one of my students and we produced it and we filmed it so that they would have a reel.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, get a group of your friends together from your acting class and have fun, be creative. Student films, I'm a big pusher of, just supporting students in general. And you never know who these directors are going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now. So you want to know them from the very beginning, and be able to help them, you know, with their careers. Yeah, I think that's all great ways to get some footage.
Well, Cassie, actually, I had a question for you, because Sheila, you brought up a really interesting point about how technology has improved so much so quickly. I wonder if you've seen, Cassie, like the bar on these reels being raised quite a bit just in the years that you've been doing it.
I think people do have higher expectations of how the reels should be put together. I mean, 10-year-olds know how to edit videos on their cell phones now. So if you can't have something look super professional, clients probably aren't going to take you seriously. There are a lot of awesome editors, even just in the local Denver area, that will put together a reel for you for $100. Super affordable, and it's a great investment in your future. So yeah, I definitely think that clients are much more particular now about how reels look. You can't just, you know, shoot something, you know, in selfie mode on your iPhone. That's not a reel. They want to see professional looking footage.
Just to piggyback on that, I see there's a question. Someone asked if they can use theater footage in their reel for film and television and commercial, and I would say no to that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really good advice. Sorry, I'm just looking around. Cassie, this next question is also directed at you. Do talent agents regularly meet with currently represented talent, or do you usually only meet with prospective talent?
Not on a regular basis. If a talent reaches out to me though and wants to grab coffee or stop in the agency to have a quick meeting, go over goals, talk about what some things they could do to improve, I'm always happy to meet with people. Obviously, with everything going on right now, you can always call or we can do a FaceTime. As far as meeting with people every single day, that's more than a full-time job in itself. So unfortunately, we can't meet with you once a week. That's just too time-consuming for us. But we're always happy to meet, you know, once every couple of months to discuss any questions or concerns you might have. And that's just speaking for me. I can't speak for all agents, but I feel like most agents are open to at least having a phone call with talent if they do want to chat with their agent.
Awesome. This is another agent question. Do talent agents get feedback from the casting director or the producer about the talent's performance, either after an audition or after filming a commercial?
Very rarely. Unfortunately, most of the times when I do get feedback, it's when it's bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sort of in my world, no news is good news. And I always make sure to share it with talent. I'd say 10% of the time I get super positive feedback from a client talking about how amazing talent was, and we'll talk about people specifically. Whenever I do get that information, I always pass it along. But unfortunately, we rarely get that feedback, and I'm sure Sylvia can chat about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will only usually give feedback unless it's someone new I've never seen. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this person's amazing, I want to see them again. But usually it's like, hey, this person came in, I think they were high. You know, I mean, it's that kind of stuff that I'll reach out to the agent about usually. For theater, it's a little different because in Denver, we don't have agents for theater. And so I'll get a lot of people writing me directly, asking me for feedback after theater auditions. Because I also cast Colorado Shakespeare Festival and some other theater companies as well. And I always say, you're welcome to ask for feedback, but just be aware that you might get feedback that maybe you don't want to hear. So just don't ask for feedback expecting to get praise, because that's not necessarily what's going to happen. So I always just caution people, it's okay to ask, but just be prepared. You may hear something that you're going to have to learn from.
Good advice. Thank you. One more agent question, and I haven't heard this one before. Should you have more than one agent, or maybe can you have more than one agent, different agents in other states, and how does that process work? Maybe you're working in New York and LA or Denver.
Yes, you can have more than one agent. Typically not, at least in a small market like Colorado, like you can't have 2 agents in Colorado. It doesn't make any sense. I know, out in California, people will sometimes have a theatrical and a commercial agent. We have a lot of talent that are represented in other states and other markets. However, if that's something you're considering, you need to make sure to really take a look at your own schedule, what kind of commitment you can make. And I'm sure Sheila can chat about this a little bit because I know she has representation in lots of different markets. If you're not able to travel, I know we rep some people that live in New Mexico and other states, and they're very difficult to get a hold of. They will only come up for auditions if they pay a certain amount of dollars. And that gets really frustrating from an agent standpoint. And also just looking at your experience. Obviously, I love when people have strong goals and want to do big things, but if you've never even booked a job before, you have to just have realistic expectations as far as getting an agent in another market. Most agencies in larger markets won't even look at you unless you're part of the union or at least have a very impressive resume. So those are just some things to think about, but if you meet all those qualifications, then I would definitely consider reaching out to other markets. Especially if it's really easy for you to travel.
So what I would add to that, thanks for throwing it this way, Cassie, too, because there's some things you really have to understand about how the business works when you're looking at other markets. So in Colorado, again, we're mostly commercials. And if you're looking at major markets where they do a lot of television and film work, those markets are predominantly those shows and those films are working under contract, and union contracts, SAG-AFTRA, of which I'm a member, the DGA, the WGA, these are all negotiated with the producers. And there are very particular guidelines about paying for actors to travel. So for example, if you're represented in Colorado and you want to work in New Mexico, whether you have a Colorado agent or you get an agent in New Mexico, the reason why actors in Colorado are desirable in New Mexico is they have what's called a 500-mile waiver. And it allows a New Mexico production to hire a Colorado actor and not have to pay them the travel days. So for example, if I'm going to cast you to work on a TV show or a film on a Wednesday, and I'm bringing you in from Los Angeles, I have to pay you that day rate that you're making on Wednesday for your travel days on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because the fact that you have to travel means you can't take a job if you're living in LA. But because of the 500-mile waiver between New Mexico and Colorado, they don't have to pay me that Tuesday and Thursday principal day rate in addition to my travel. So there's a lot of considerations when you're getting agents in other market that if the production company is in New Mexico or in Atlanta because they get tax incentives or rebates or tax credits, their first priority is going to be to cast out of the local, because the actors that they cast in that local are rebatable. If they cast me for a show in New Mexico, while they might save on money compared to flying somebody in from LA, if they have another actor who lives in New Mexico that can do what I can do, they're going to choose that actor because they're going to get a tax break on them that they won't get on me. So if you don't understand how the business works and you don't have an agent who's savvy or people that are in the know, they'll say, oh yeah, your odds are just as good. And they're not. They're not. And you could be spending time, money, and resources to pay for tapings and pay for coaches to study for those auditions when your chances of getting booked are really slim. Now, if you know your unique type for that market, or you have an agent there that says, I don't have anybody like you, I'd love to have you, then you need to weigh that out. When I first started working in New Mexico, I spent a lot of time and money driving back and forth until the casting directors knew who I was, knew they could count on me to show up, to be there, I would do and perform well on the set. Then it was like, okay, now I can send in self-tapes and whatever, because they know that they can count on me. So it's something that I would carefully talk to that agent in the market or your agent here who might represent you in New Mexico. But you have to do your homework and understand how the business works to know what the real percentages are for that. I would say one thing, and we talked about this the other day, and that is right now, particularly with the pandemic, and I see there's some questions, none of us are going into audition rooms. Most productions across the country are shut down unless it's commercial work that you can do, in the same way that we're doing the Zoom work here, or it's voiceover work. To protect the performers, people aren't on set shooting TV shows and films. And so there are a lot of things that we've noticed online right now that are asking actors to submit themselves, and gee, you can become the Zoom spokesperson for this client and it'll pay you $1,000 a day, or it'll pay you $1,500, or you may get to do this, that, or the other. And what you have to know about these situations is that almost every social media forum or platform that we have that normally works under contracts can apply to those situations, whether it's gaming videos, commercials, corporate industrial film, somebody's doing an innovative TV show via Zoom. You need to check and make sure. You could do a commercial from a client that could put you into a non-compete situation. Sounds like a lot of money for $1,000 a day to do this bank commercial. And then you find out a big national company wants to do you for a bank commercial, and that's going to pay you $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, but you can't come close because you did a non-union thing for $1,000 that you're not going to get residuals on, that they can use in perpetuity. So while we're locked down here and we're sort of all at our own resources, you need to ask professional questions about the industry. From your agent. If you don't have an agent and maybe you have an acting coach, you can always go to the Colorado Film Commission website or the Colorado Film and Video Association. Look at their resource list and just try to get valid information. Listen to these webinars on what's reasonable for you to do.
And on that note, actually, speaking of good information and upcoming information, I'm seeing a lot of questions about unions and about SAG-AFTRA. I'm not purposely ignoring you guys who are asking those questions. However, we are going to be hosting another webinar, and hopefully in early May, I think. It's going to be with Sheila and a couple other union representatives. So we'll keep you updated when we get that date and time figured out. But for right now, I might pivot a little bit away from the union questions just so we can save those for the next webinar.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say about the union stuff, Kelly, for people to realize is that if you're looking at this as a career and you're looking strictly from a performer's perspective, and you're looking at, you want a career in television or film, it's to really understand that this industry revolves around union negotiated contracts. It's all about collective bargaining between the actors, the directors, the writer guild, the Teamster, IATSE, and the producers to create the most important thing. It's about safety on the set and protections for every person who works on those sets. So I just wanted to sort of lay that groundwork and encourage anybody to tune in when we do the union webinar in May.
Yeah, and whenever I have that information, I'll send out an email to all of you guys who have registered. So if you're interested, you can just click it and register for that one from there. So thank you, Sheila, thank you everybody. Gonna go back to some of these questions. And somebody's asked if any of you guys have seen opportunities opening up more for actors with visible disabilities, and if so, in where? Television, commercials? Yeah.
That's a great question.
Wanna,
yeah, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. I can't say specifically where I've seen it, but I know more and more, at least from the jobs that I've worked on, clients are saying, if we have a character who's in this script with a disability, we want that character represented by an actual actor with a disability. And I would say that that has shifted from even 10 years ago when it was like, you know, CGI it or, you know, whatever, you know. I think there's more respect now. Also, I see this with transgender actors. I see this with, you know, a lot of different things where it's like we want an actual person with this specific requirement representing the character. So I can't say, yeah, you know, there's more in commercials. I can't say that specifically, but I do know that there's a little more awareness and respect for actors with disabilities to try and cast specific characters that way.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of breakdowns out in larger markets. Here, not quite as much. We have a few people with some disabilities on our roster, and I've been able to submit them for a decent amount of opportunities, specifically more out in LA. But like Sylvia said, I do feel like clients are much more aware now and much more inclusive of having people that actually fit the character and not just having someone pretend to be that. So it's slowly coming. I think our whole market is slowly growing up a little bit more. So I think over the last couple of years, we've seen people opening up a lot more characters up for people of color, which has been fantastic, and being more welcoming to the LGBTQ community. And so I think that this is going to be the next phase, which is awesome. So if you are someone with a disability, you know, I would highly encourage you to get involved in the industry for sure.
So what I would like to add to this is I actually serve on the SAG-AFTRA National Performers with Disabilities Committee, and I have since 2012. I also serve on the EEO Diversity Committee, and this has been a very aggressive campaign for the unions. This is one of the reasons why I am an advocate of the unions, because we are critical in making sure that underrepresented communities are seen by the industry. So beyond just as letting roles that are written for performers with disabilities, why aren't we calling somebody in with a disability to play roles that aren't written for performers with disabilities? That's the biggest issue. I mean, for years, I mean, it was a struggle for African Americans and then Indian Americans and Asian Americans, and it still is when you look at the percentages for women of color, for, you know, older women. Still the scripts skew younger. And when you look at performers with disabilities, why am I not seeing the store clerk or the lawyer? These roles could be played by performers with disabilities, even though that's not part of the storyline. So what SAG-AFTRA has done, we worked very closely with Casting Society of America and Russell Boast, who was actually here in Colorado. We did a panel at Series Fest for performers with disabilities. And they actually held, in conjunction with the union, and they coordinated across the country and did auditions specifically so that the casting pool could meet performers with disabilities. And they have this opportunity to submit and to attend events. So we're very aggressive on making sure not only that we're considered, but that the sets are designed to accommodate performers with disabilities and special needs, that when a performer who is blind or hearing impaired gets an audition notice, that there are means for them to be able to understand the material and so that they can come in and perform. So that's part of what we do with the union, and it's a very aggressive campaign.
That's a great point. And I just want to point out, this isn't commercially based, but Colorado Shakes this summer was going to be doing Midsummer Night's Dream. And it's all been postponed, of course, for a year, but our Puck was going to be a deaf actor. And we were really excited about that because, you know, Puck's not written to be deaf, you know, and it was just sort of, this actor told the story beautifully, and his physicality for the character Puck was amazing. And it was just such a great opportunity to utilize that. Anyway, I agree with you, Sheila. That's a great point.
And there is Family Theater Company for those of you who are theater actors. If you don't know about Family, PHAMALY, please look them up on the internet. They only cast performers with disabilities and do some of the most stunning productions I've ever seen.
Agreed.
Sheila, I'm gonna send out that link to everybody right now. I've seen it before. I just want to make sure I'm spelling it right. P-H-A-M-I-L-Y. Is that what you said?
No, P-H-A-M-A-L-Y.
Okay. So if you guys just Google that, then you'll be able to check it out from there. Should be in your little chat box to the right. Okay, awesome. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm gonna try not to keep you guys late or anything. So, and we also have about like over 30 questions, and I think some of those are coming from Cassie's people. So she's gonna try to get to you directly.
Shout out to Wilhelmina, Denver people. You guys have all been tuning in. So I'm trying to answer your questions individually, so that way if we don't get to them, you're still answered.
Awesome, thank you. So I might cherry pick some of these questions just to make sure we're kind of getting a little bit from all over. So forgive me if your question isn't answered out loud, but we're gonna try in the next 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit, but it might be worth broadening for a little bit and to have everybody's perspectives. What, if anything, do you think the effect of coronavirus is going to have on Colorado on-camera work? Like, what have you already seen happen, and what are you kind of projecting for this summer and going forward?
I honestly think we're going to get really busy once all of this dies down a lot. I'm already starting to see clients using other platforms such as, Zoom, TikTok, and Instagram to market out to their clients. So I think it's just going to change the way a little bit that we're doing things. And so I've already sort of started telling my talent, take this free time right now to really get more familiar with all of these different types of platforms and technology. I could really see them taking off here in the next couple of months. So I personally think things are going to start getting busier, especially, with larger projects. Now a client out in LA, they could have a Zoom meeting with Sylvia and do an audition process with her that way, and then only have to fly in for the shoot. So I think us taking advantage of this technology is really going to make things expand in our market. That's just my opinion.
Great, thank you. We'll move on. Okay, this is really interesting. How much do casting directors consider an actor's social media? Does it help or hurt chances of getting cast?
I'm going to say in the Denver market, I don't consider it at all. In the Denver market, it does not hurt or hinder one way or the other. That is not true in larger markets like New York and LA. And I think that, for a lot of actors, the more followers you have on social media and you're up against 2 or 3 other people and they can't decide and they go look and see who's the most popular, who's going to bring more people to viewing this, they're going to go with that person. I just, in Denver, that's just not relevant.
What I would say about that is, there's a lot of pushback to that too, because there's a lot of actors who don't have a social media presence. And I think it really depends too, if there's a lot of reality type television, and in that particular forum, what your imprint is on social media would be really, really important. So if you want to be a reality television star or host or an influencer on your own web series, then yes, that might be very important for you. There are some agents. I have a friend in Los Angeles whose agent dropped everybody who didn't have a social media presence. But then I think that for actors who are really serious and very talented, if you do your work and you focus on that and you're showing up at auditions and you're turning in stuff, I don't think that you have to have that. I think you have to look at where you're trying to break in.
It's sort of a gray area from my perspective, because Wilhelmina has a very strong presence, obviously, in the modeling industry and in the entire world. We're seeing a lot of clients that do care about it. It's primarily if a project is a print video crossover. They want to see that talent have a lot of followers. I know our agency, and I think a couple other agencies here, do represent influencers. Sometimes just in general, I've had clients ask for their social media handles just to get a feel for talent's personality and see what they're like in general. So is it absolutely necessary in a market like Denver? No. But depending on the types of clients, there are clients that do ask those things, and will ask for your analytics, and will ask for your numbers. So I think it just sort of depends on what type of client it is. If it's, if Nike is shooting, a lot of times they want to see what type of outreach you have on your social media. So I think it just sort of depends. But in a market like Denver, if you're first starting out, there's no need to go ham on an Instagram page. I would wait until you've developed a little bit more and have more footage to go over. And your agent can always chat with you about it as well, as far as how to market yourself properly over social media.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm looking at, these questions I think came in when we were talking about doing your reel. So there's so many of them. I kind of wonder if maybe each of you guys can go through some hot tips and tricks for creating your reels these days. Do you recommend not using clips from previous commercials you've been in is a question. There's been more emphasis lately on sharing individual scenes and clips rather than just doing a traditional reel. Yeah, if you guys have any thoughts about how best to present your reel these days, that would be helpful.
I'll go first because it's going to be really short. I just say put whatever you have that's your best and your most professional first, because I'm probably going to, if I'm watching it, it's going to be 10 seconds probably, and then I probably have what I need, and then I'm off. So don't save your best thing for the last, because I'll probably never see it.
And then to piggyback on what Sylvia just said, set your reels up so like if you have a website, you can put your reel and then you could have links to the full project or a condensed form of that project so they can see more if they want to. A lot of Actors Access, now casting, Actors Breakdown services, you can put up little clips and you can set them up in a commercial or theatrical section. So what I've advised my students who work both commercial and theatrical, television and film, your commercial reel should look different than your TV theatrical reel. So you're going to put commercial stuff on the front. Also, if you don't want to show a non-compete situation, you don't need to put the tag for the commercial and the insurance company. A lot of people think it has to make sense. They have to tell the story. They just want to see, can you walk? Can you talk? Are you real? Do you engage me? It doesn't need to be a full scene. So like Sylvia said, make sure it's your best, but probably wouldn't hurt to have, if you're submitting for a dramatic piece, you've got a little clip already prepared where your dramatic piece is first. If you're submitting for a comedic role, put your comedic snippet first. And if it's for commercials, that's separate from your television and film work.
And the last thing I want to say is be sure that I can hear your voice. A lot of times reels will have clips that's just like action and music and there's no dialogue. And half the time I'm watching a reel so that I can hear what you sound like.
Yeah, don't do the montage. That's so many actors start with 30 seconds of a montage. I can ride a horse, I can jump into a pool, I can do this, I can do that. Talk to it.
Okay, I haven't seen enough reels to see all these montages. That sounds fun though. How often should somebody update their headshot? You know, every new haircut, every year? What do you think?
I would say every year or two. It really depends on how much your look changes. But you have to look like your headshot. If you don't look like your headshot, your agent will be mad at you. The casting directors will be mad at you. It's your business card. I know a lot of things are moving more electronically, but like I know these clients, they sit there and they stare at all of these headshots because it's a lot easier sometimes just to look at a bunch of them laying down on the ground or on a computer screen rather than going through every single tape individually. So that's their first initial impression of you. And if you walk into if your headshot is you with brown hair and a beard and you walk in and you're balding and gray and your beard is shaved and look nothing like that person, they're going to be like, who is this? So I'd say every 1 to 2 years. It really just depends on your age group. Teens tend to need them a lot quicker because their looks are changing so fast, but if you're in your 20s and 30s, you can usually go a couple of years. And it just depends. Yeah, if you change your hair drastically, if you gain or lose a lot of weight, if you lose hair, yeah, it just sort of depends, but at least every couple of years, I'd say. Keep it fresh.
I was going to say even, and it depends on the markets too, but maybe even more frequently than that for the purpose of keeping it fresh. If I had the same headshot going in front of my agent or the same casting directors all the time, it's sort of like a stale rendition of me. And what I recommend is to handle this so you're not paying for headshots every 6 months or a year. I work as an art director with a headshot photographer in town, and we'll do 4 or 5 looks of somebody. If it's a guy, we'll have him come in with a beard. Halfway through the shoot, we shave and he shoots stuff without the beard. So then they have you know, a couple dozen photographs that they can switch out on Actors Access, breakdown services, now casting, or for a particular job, they can say, oh, wow, they're going to look at me for this. Let me pop that one up. So that doesn't mean you have to shoot every 6 months and break the bank, but when you do shoot, think about that. I might put my hair up so I look more authoritative or professional. You know, come with some variety in your shoot itself so that you have different pictures that you can make available, and your agent might go, I love that one, let's send this one.
I 100% agree. I know, yeah, roughly every 5 or 6 months, if a headshot is not working for talent, I'll go in and I'll switch it on their website to see if that one draws more attention from clients. And a lot of times it does. And sometimes it's even just a simple, what color shirt you're wearing. Maybe it makes your eyes pop a little bit more. Do you sometimes wear glasses? Maybe you have an outdoor shot and you have a vest on, and there are a lot of outdoor clients shooting and it really appeals to them. So yeah, having a variety of looks is always really helpful for your agent as well.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, guys. We're at time. I'm sorry if we did not get to your question, but maybe in the last minute, I kind of want to see if we can go around, put you guys on the spot, and from your 3 different perspectives, give like one piece of takeaway advice for everybody who's looking to get a job, or looking to get an agent, or looking to get some more acting tips. And go. One takeaway.
Communication, listening, be a good communicator. And I didn't mention this before, but please always reply to the emails that your agent sends you. It gets really frustrating when we're hinting you down. That's a way to kind of stay in our good graces. But yeah, having good communication skills and knowing how to communicate is key. If we feel like you're yelling at us in an email for no reason, that's going to be hard for us to digest. So really just be mindful of how you're communicating to everyone involved in the process.
And I would say just be professional. I think be confident and be brief.
There it is.
And I was going to ask a question before I make my note, Kelly. Are you passing along? I'm happy to pass along my email on, you know, should I just give that to you when you send that, or?
Sure, if you guys are open to it, if there are still questions that you guys passionately want answered, you can email me. You can email info@coloradofilm.org, and I can pass it along to our panelists. So please feel free to follow up.
And I'm happy to share my email with them so you can send that out if you want. But what I was gonna share is this industry. It's so different than the way most industries work. If I go work at a bank, I'm there Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. You know, as an actor, you have multiple employers, and a lot of what you do has to be self-motivated. Where you get your information from, other actors, your agent, your acting coaches. Please take what you do seriously. Research your business. Understand how this business works. That's how you can advance yourself. You would never go to work at the zoo and not know anything about animals. I cannot believe how many actors walk through my door who really understand nothing about how the business works. How do you make important decisions for yourself if you don't understand the business that you're working in? So study, it's a craft. Michael Jordan had a coach till the day he stopped playing basketball. There's a reason for that. It's a muscle that you need to flex. Find a good coach for you. Take this seriously. Learn about the business that you want to succeed in. And again, like Cassie said, listen, you know.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being on this panel, for doing all of this. Thank you to all the attendees who are out there. I'll just end with my mini spiel that you can look for our other webinars at coloradofilm.org /webinar-series. And yeah, we're gonna have Sheila back very soon, which is very exciting. So like I said before, if you have any questions, you can email myself and I'll send out Sheila's email as well to everybody who has a question. So thank you. I don't think I have anything else. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and any of my talent, I'm trying to answer your questions, but if I don't get to them on here, you can just email me and I can happily answer them for you.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Thank you.